Everyone laughed when I spent $2 billion on a broken warship. 3 days later, they were all dead. I spent billions to buy a decommissioned battleship, and everyone laughed at me for buying a pile of scrap metal. But only I knew that 3 days later, the world would be swept by a zombie apocalypse. My name is Lin Feng. Before my rebirth, I was a crane operator at the Yungang docks. I struggled for 12 years, finally winning billions in the lottery. But before I could even squander a penny, the zombie apocalypse struck. I was hiding in my family's warehouse when I was torn apart by a zombie horde, a flash of white light. I was reborn 7 days before the apocalypse. My bank account held 12 billion yuan, untouched. My tragic death in my previous life was etched into my bones. I understood that there were no absolutely safe zones on land. Zombies wouldn't wade in water, and the boundless ocean was the only way to survive in the apocalypse. I set my sights on the Zhunhai Super Heavy battleship, which had been docked in the port for 10 years without any interest. It was 420 meters long, with a full load displacement of 120,000 tons, the largest battleship ever built in human history. With a main armor belt 600 millimeters thick, it can withstand anti-ship missile attacks. Its 28 independent water-resistant compartments ensure it won't sink even if 3 layers are breached. It's a naturally impregnable sea fortress. I made a call to the predepositor, immediately offering 2 billion yuan, with full payment due today. There was a 10-second silence on the other end, the person in charge's voice trembling uncontrollably, but then said, "Okay, we'll get it done right now." The moment the ship was moved in, I directly called 5 of the nation's top broadcasting companies, finalizing contracts at 20 times the daily rate, demanding immediate commencement. Working day and night in double shifts, 3,500 workers and engineers boarded the ship at 6 a.m. The sounds of ship songs, Han-style street music, and the roar of engines echoed from bow to stern. Han-style flowers illuminated the night sky over Jungang as if it were daytime, and the sea around the town trembled incessantly. The renovation project was underway. Starting with the most extreme defenses, I ordered 500 million to add double-layered composite blast-resistant armor to the entire hull, increasing the total thickness to 1 meter. Forget about zombies' claws. Even a direct hit from an aerial bomb would only cause a scratch. An 8-meter high titanium alloy fence was added around the main deck, connected to a 1,000,000-volt high-voltage electric grid. Anything touching it would be instantly carbonized. All ventilation openings and backup entrances were welded shut with military-grade steel plates, leaving only one hydraulically operated main hatch, capable of withstanding 200-ton impacts without breaking a sweat. Meanwhile, I spent one for 200 million yuan. The main ammunition depot at the lowest level of the ship was transformed into a 1,500 cubic meter ultra-low temperature cold storage, capable of storing 1,200 tons of frozen materials. Even in the event of a power outage, it can maintain its temperature for 3 months and operate continuously for 20 years without any problems. Stockpiling was started simultaneously. 300 trucks lined up in a 3-kilometer-long queue at the dock, with robotic arms transferring goods 24 hours a day. 600,000 kilograms of rice, 400,000 kilograms of flour, 200,000 kilograms of miscellaneous grains, 50,000 barrels of cooking oil, and 120 containers of canned goods were loaded. The cold storage was stocked with 600,000 kilograms of frozen meat, 300,000 kilograms of frozen seafood, and enough mineral water for the entire ship for 10 years. In addition, 4 sets of large-scale seawater desalination equipment were installed, ensuring that the water supply would never be interrupted. I poured all the remaining money into 3 things: propulsion weapons and doomsday weapons. First, I upgraded the propulsion system. I directly dismantled the ship's old steam turbines, spending 1.5 billion yuan to hire a top domestic nuclear industry team to replace them with for military-grade small marine nuclear reactors. 50 engineers worked in 2 shifts, 3 days and 3 nights without sleep, to complete the installation and commissioning. The steel nuclear reactors successfully started up, and a deep resonance swept from the hull. Every inch of steel plate, from the ship's hull to the engine room, was tilting. I stood at the engine room door with goosebumps all over my body. This steel behemoth, which had been dormant for 10 years, was completely alive. One refueling was enough for it to cruise continuously for 30 years without needing to be docked, truly achieving unlimited cruising. As for the weapons, the original 4 triple-mounted 510mm cannons were fully repaired and upgraded, with a rate of fire of 12 rounds per minute and an effective range of 50 kilometers. A single high-explosive shell could flatten half a city block. Through my old connections in the retired military industry, I spent 800 million to purchase 1,200 armor-piercing rounds, incendiary rounds, and thermobaric rounds. These were secretly stored in a special naval port warehouse. The ship was then equipped with 36 anti-tank guns and 12 electromagnetic pulse guns, providing 360-degree fire coverage. Any target within 500 meters would be instantly riddled with holes. Finally, my trump card, a 37 armored legion spanning land, sea, and air. I spent 600 million to customize 500 combat robots with waterproof and corrosion-resistant alloy hulls, equipped with 500,000-volt high-voltage esports modules, 12-ton magnetically charged hydraulic armor-piercing claws, and thermal directional all-terrain tracking capabilities. They can operate in all weather conditions, rain or night. 100 robots will be responsible for deck surveillance, 150 for cabin patrols, 200 will form an underwater defense network, and 50 will be equipped with drones for reconnaissance and strikes. Within 400 meters of the ship, any underwater target will be instantly annihilated before it even touches the hull. That afternoon, the main gun was test-fired, shells whistling as they crashed into the open sea, creating towering waves hundreds of meters high. With 48 hours left until the end of the world, all the renovation work was completed. I posted a recruitment notice online, offering a monthly salary of $2 million to recruit a closed-door oceanographic expedition team, with priority given to those with backgrounds in medical engineering, agriculture, and military industry. Within just 3 hours of the announcement, the number of applicants exceeded 10,000. I personally screened the applicants for an entire day, ultimately finalizing a team of 180 surgeons, 5 naval engineers, 6 agricultural experts, 12 in total, military technicians, for 5-star chefs, and a large number of security and navigation personnel who had undergone rigorous physical and psychological tests. I knew better than anyone that in the end times, specialized talent was more valuable than gold and weapons. When this group of people, filled with excitement and anticipation for a wonderful adventure, stepped onto the makeshift stairs and saw the rotating military radar, the patrolling combat robots, the giant naval guns pointing straight to the sky, and the operating panel of the nuclear reactor on the island's superstructure, they all froze in place, speechless. The retired female captain leading the group, Su Qingyuan, stared at the island's superstructure for a full 5 seconds. This is not an exploration ship. This is a strategic ship. What exactly are you taking us to do? I will lead you to survival. This ship is 1,000 times safer than anywhere on land. That afternoon, I activated the entire ship's defense system, conducted a pressure test, and detonated amplified explosives near the hull. The ship experienced only a slight tremor, remaining completely undamaged. The high-voltage power grid was energized, and a steel plate thrown onto it instantly melted into molten iron. The synchronized marching of 500 robots completed a full-scale combat drill, the deck reverberating. Everyone present was visibly shocked. In the evening, a 100-meter-long banquet was laid out on the main deck, accompanied by fine wine, top-grade Wagyu beef, and a wide variety of seafood sashimi. Jazz music flowed with the sea breeze. Robots stood silently on guard around the perimeter, and the giant cannons stood silently in the night. At 6 a.m., the final hour arrived precisely on time, and the entire signal was instantly cut off. News channels went silent, the only sound the crackling of static on the radio. I picked up my high-backed binoculars and saw that Yungang Wharf had been completely overrun by zombies. They were attacking relentlessly, biting anyone they saw, blood instantly staining the azure sea red. Screams, explosions, and the howls of zombies could still be clearly heard across the 5-kilometer stretch of sea. In just 1 hour, the once bustling city had been reduced to a living hell. I pressed the ship's intercom, my voice cold and resolute. All personnel, enter Level 1 combat readiness. All weapon systems activated. Robots running at full power. Intercept. Start the main engines. For nuclear reactors, full power output. The 120,000-ton steel behemoth slowly moved away from its barge. The zombies on the dock hull crowded at the end of the bridge, howling madly. They scratched and clawed, unable to even touch the edge of the warship, forced to watch helplessly as we sailed into the deep sea. The crew, pale with shock at the smoke and fire that filled the sky behind them, at the utterly destroyed city, finally realized they hadn't boarded some high-tech vacation ship, but the only Noah's Ark in the apocalypse. The land was truly gone. I gazed at the city's silhouette, gradually disappearing into the smoke, and said in a low voice, "The land is gone." My pupils constricted. In my 10 years of life, I had never seen a plainclothes zombie capable of swimming in the open ocean. Immediately afterward, 8 high-speed dots appeared on the radar screen from the direction of the port, official frigates fully loaded with weapons. A shout came over the public channel. "Vanguard Warship, you are operating state-owned military assets. Stop immediately and accept control, or we will." Before I could even give the order for the firepower strike, a heart-wrenching scream suddenly erupted from the living quarters. The security personnel's urgent shouts blared over the loudspeaker. "Captain, something's wrong. Someone's gone missing. We're trapped in the living quarters." Underwater, everything was in danger. Behind me, the armed fleet's guns fell silent. A sudden infection crisis had struck the ship. 3 desperate situations were looming. I gripped my sidearm tightly. This maritime steel ship was about to engage in its first doomsday battle. Without a trace of panic, I firmly believed in the situation. I pressed the emergency lockdown order, and 20 blast-proof steel gates slammed shut, locking the missing living quarters in a separate compartment. The ventilation system simultaneously switched to negative pressure, completely blocking the spread of the infection. I accessed the internal surveillance cameras, locked onto the missing person, and immediately activated the high-temperature disinfection process in this section, with temperatures reaching 3,000 degrees Celsius, instantly filled the enclosed space. In less than 10 seconds, the mutants and the virus were completely carbonized, and the crisis inside the cabin was immediately eliminated. The underwater sonar alarm grew increasingly piercing, and I immediately activated the underwater defense network. 200 forward-deployed combat robots spread out in a fan shape. Their hydraulic armor-piercing claws, combined with high-voltage electric shock modules, charged into the zombie horde to indiscriminately strangle the mutant zombies. The powerful claws couldn't tear through the alloy fuselage. Upon contact with the high-voltage electricity, they stiffened and sank to the bottom. Soon, patches of dampness rose from the sea surface, and a gap was instantly torn open. The 8 escort ships behind me had entered the main gun range, all pointing their cannons at my hull. I immediately unlocked the 4 510mm main guns, and the cannons simultaneously turned and locked onto the escort ships. Just as I was about to initiate the firing sequence, the radar suddenly detected 20 out-of-control cargo ships, laden with zombies, charging straight towards us and the escort fleet from the direction of the port. I didn't rush to fire. Instead, I locked the main gun parameters and activated all the ship's radars, scanning at full power. I confirmed that there were no signs of life on the 20 cargo ships, and their decks and holds were crammed with zombies. Their speed was at maximum, clearly indicating a suicide ramming attack. I immediately switched to the static defense gun system, activating all 36 static defense guns, aiming them at the oncoming cargo ship fleet. Simultaneously, I sent a warning signal to the escort fleet. Without further negotiation, we simply shared the cargo ship's real-time coordinates. The escort fleet's guns instantly turned away, no longer aimed at me. Instead of targeting the battleships, they opened fire on the leading cargo ship. Explosions rang out one after another, blasting large holes in the ship's hull, yet it continued to surge forward due to inertia. Zombies on the deck were blown to pieces, but more zombies jumped into the sea through the broken hull. I seized this opportunity and ordered the reactor to be increased to 70% success rate. The 120,000-ton steel behemoth instantly accelerated and rushed towards the open sea. The lead robots continued to cover the rear, annihilating the underwater zombies, while the static defense guns simultaneously cleared away any stray zombies that managed to get close. Just as we were about to break out of the encirclement, the sonar suddenly issued the highest level red alert. A gigantic target, comparable in size to a destroyer, was rushing straight towards the hull of our ship at an extremely high speed. I immediately locked onto the sonar. The signal revealed the outline of the giant underwater target. It was a mutated blue crystal over 200 meters long, its body covered with a hardened keratin layer several meters thick, its mouth filled with spiraling fangs. It was a top-tier deep-sea predator that only appeared in the later stages of my previous life. Its target was clearly the battleship's propeller. Once the propeller was destroyed, we would become sitting ducks at sea. I immediately ordered the entire ship to turn hard to port and released all the forward combat robots. All 500 robots sank underwater and surrounded the mutated blue crystal. The high-voltage power module activated at full power, and 500,000 volts of high-voltage electricity instantly formed an electric grid underwater. The mutated blue crystal let out a silent roar the moment it collided with the grid, its body convulsing violently. The momentum suddenly slowed, and the escort fleet behind reacted, launching several depth charges simultaneously. The explosions around the mutated blue crystal caused the ships to tremble slightly, and the mutated blue crystal's body was blasted with several bloody holes. Completely enraged, it turned and charged towards the escort fleet. I seized this opportunity and ordered the warship to leave the area at full speed. However, after sailing less than 5 nautical miles, the ship's material monitoring system suddenly sounded an alarm. The core refrigeration unit in the cold storage had malfunctioned for an unknown reason. I immediately led the military engineering team to the cold storage and checked the refrigeration unit's operation log to investigate the cause of the malfunction. The log showed that the unit had been shut down from backup 10 minutes earlier. The power supply and main power lines were also maliciously damaged, and the temperature inside the cold storage was rising at a rate of 5 degrees Celsius per hour. Once it exceeded the critical value, the nearly 1 million tons of frozen supplies inside would be completely ruined. I immediately ordered all personnel on the ship to conduct a search and simultaneously activated the backup refrigeration units to stabilize the temperature inside the cold storage. Through the cabin monitoring and personnel entry and exit records, I quickly identified 3 spies who had infiltrated the recruitment team. They were dockside personnel planted in advance with the goal of destroying my material reserves and forcing me to dock. I ordered the combat robots to capture the 3 men and eliminate them on the spot, leaving no hidden dangers. The military industrial team repaired the refrigeration units overnight, and the cold storage returned to normal operation. At this time, the radar news came that the previous escort fleet had been completely wiped out by the mutated gold-blocking ships and zombie cargo ships. No one survived. I had just breathed a sigh of relief when the radar suddenly scanned the distant sea and spotted a large survivor fleet of over 20 ships rapidly approaching our route. I immediately ordered the entire ship to enter first-level combat readiness, with the radar locked on the fleet at full power. At the same time, I deployed drones to scout ahead. The footage transmitted by the drones showed that the fleet consisted mostly of converted fishing boats and cargo ships, loaded with armed personnel and heavy weapons. Many coerced survivors were also tied to the decks. This was no ordinary survivor group. It was a pirate fleet that had been burning, killing, and looting in the apocalypse, charging towards us. Attempting to forcibly board and seize the ships, I immediately ordered the high-voltage electric grid to be activated at full power. Simultaneously, the anti-tank guns opened fire on the leading vessels. The pirates who rushed forward were instantly paralyzed by the high-voltage electricity the moment they touched the hull. The 3 leading ships were also sunk by the anti-tank guns. I deployed forward-deployed robots to scuttle the enemy ships, used drones to blockade the fleet, and dropped incendiary bombs. In less than 2 hours, the entire pirate fleet was annihilated. I rescued over 100 coerced survivors, recruited those with specialized skills, and seized a large quantity of weapons and supplies. Just as I was tallying my spoils, the sonar suddenly sounded an alarm. A large number of underwater mutants were rapidly approaching us along our course.